You step into the small bedroom, where a dim yellow light spills over an old photograph, a girl with deep-set eyes and a faint, melancholy smile. The wind whistles through the cracked window frame, and if you listen closely, perhaps you'll hear something more than wind, a sound like breathing, heavy, drawn out, belonging to no one still living. This room was once where Anneliese Michel grew up, and where dreams unraveled into nightmares. At 16, healthy, devout, and bright, she began drifting into a twilight realm where science faltered and faith failed to save her. It all began with seizures, though no one remembers the exact day. In 1968, during a school day in Klingenberg, Anneliese suddenly stiffened and trembled uncontrollably. Doctors diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition known to cause auditory hallucinations, visions, and the sense of an unseen presence. A logical diagnosis, a treatment plan, but no one foresaw that from that moment on, her life would never return to normal. You follow her through the years that follow: medications, psychiatrist visits, endless prayers. Something shifts in her gaze, you notice. Not just illness, fear. A fear that eats away at her, keeping her from sleep, from eating, and at times, from herself. Anneliese begins to say she hears voices, commanding, mocking, blasphemous, sometimes groaning, sometimes whispering ancient words in a language she never studied. Once when you follow her mother into the room, you find Anneliese curled under the bed, scratching at her own skin, muttering, "He's watching me, he won't look away." Her mother weeps, her father stays silent, and the doctor writes another prescription. By 1973, Anneliese refuses treatment. She believes she's not sick, she's possessed. She and her devout family turn to the church, but their request for an exorcism is denied repeatedly. The church requires strict proof of possession, speaking unknown languages, supernatural strength, violent reactions to sacred symbols, and symptoms unexplainable by medicine. You might laugh softly if someone said it'd have to be like that movie, The Exorcist, to qualify. Funny thing is, that film premiered in 1973, just as Anneliese's struggles escalated. Strangely, her symptoms mirror those on screen. But is she mimicking, or is something mirroring her? Over 2 years pass before Father Ernst Alt, a priest who believes the cause is spiritual, convinces the local bishop to approve an exorcism. A second priest, Father Arnold Renz, joins him. They follow the Rituale Romanum, a rarely used traditional rite. By now, Anneliese is 23, thin, hollow-eyed, and speaking, sometimes, in voices not her own. The first session happens in the very room you stand in. The window is shut. Holy water sprinkled across the walls, a crucifix above the bed. Anneliese lies curled on a mattress, her limbs bound gently with cloth to prevent self-harm. The priests begin with prayer, then comes the reading, then the screaming. Not one voice, many at once. A recording from that session still exists, where Anneliese screams phrases that mix ancient Latin with German and a few French words. At one point, she growls, "I am Judas, the betrayer. I will never rest." The lights flicker, and you feel the room tilt. You wonder, was that her voice, or something else using her as a mouthpiece? Around this time, an odd detail emerges. Anneliese stops eating, not because she's lost appetite, but because she believes that eating nourishes the demons within her. She fasts to weaken them, a motive at once strange and heartbreaking. But investigators still can't agree on whether her actions stem from religious delusion or a holy resistance against something truly present. The story grows heavier, yet you remain, because something in Anneliese's eyes keeps you here, as if she wants you to understand something that ordinary language cannot carry. And don't worry, if a chill is crawling up your spine, that's probably just the wind outside the window, or something else.
You're still there, sitting in the sealed room, not because you enjoy the feeling of a shiver running down your spine, but because you sense something unfinished, something unresolved. A whisper in the air, brushing against the back of your neck. You no longer see Anneliese as merely a possessed girl or a delusional patient. She's become a mirror, reflecting the fear and faith of an entire era, where science and religion tried to coexist but never quite met. Over the next 10 months, exorcism sessions continue nearly weekly, sometimes lasting hours. You begin to ask yourself, what could compel a 23-year-old girl in the prime of her youth to offer her body as the battleground for an invisible war? Anneliese no longer speaks in one voice. She begins to fracture. 6 voices, each claiming to be a different entity, take turns emerging from within her, and the names they give send a cold ripple down your back. Judas, the betrayer. Nero, the emperor who burned Rome. Hitler, the harbinger of war and genocide. Cain, the first murderer. And then 2 names that feel both strange and oddly familiar. Lucifer and Fleischmann, a 16th century priest disgraced and excommunicated for heresy. You might scoff, Hitler and Lucifer sharing a body? Really? But in the tapes, each voice has its own texture. One rasps like stone, another slithers like a snake over glass, and another chuckles, a guttural sound laced with curses. One of the strangest sessions occurs in December 1975. When Father Renz raises the crucifix, Anneliese, or rather Fleischmann's voice, suddenly recites a passage in ancient Latin. She'd never studied Latin, at least not according to any known record. You feel your chest tighten. If this is illness, how do you explain that? And still, through all those voices, one thing never changes. Her eyes. In the surviving photos, even when bound, face bloodied and lips cracked, her gaze burns with something strange. Not madness, but will. Once, when asked why she won't stop, she simply replies, "I want to prove the devil is real, so people will believe." Such a simple sentence, and yet it leaves you sitting in silence for a very long time. By this point, her family is worn thin. Her mother, Anna, is no longer the stern figure from earlier years. She now spends sleepless nights kneeling beside her daughter, clutching rosary beads, whispering prayers. Once, you glimpse her cradling an old photo, lips moving. If I could take it from her, I would. Her father remains silent, as if trying to anchor his faith. But each time he exits the room, his eyes are distant, a man steeped in ritual, powerless in his own home. You can't forget one small detail, minor almost, but deeply unsettling. In early 1976, during an exorcism, while everyone's focus is on the screaming and convulsing, Anneliese suddenly sits upright, her voice gentle, and murmurs in her own tone, "Mom, I'm so cold." That line, so simple, so human, shatters the atmosphere like a bell. It reminds you that beneath the growling, the voices, the theory, lies a girl, a daughter, asking for comfort. From April onward, Anneliese's body declines rapidly. She becomes partially paralyzed, unable to walk. Still, she refuses food. Despite her wasting frame, she begs the priests not to stop. Once, when Father Alt hesitates, suggesting rest, she locks eyes with him and says, "No, they're still here." You wonder, can a person lost in hallucination maintain such resolve? Or does she understand exactly what's inside her and refuse to let it win? Here's something few people know. During all 67 sessions, Anneliese never once cursed God. She cursed demons. She resisted. To outsiders, she looked mad, but to herself, this was war for faith. Still, investigators never agree whether Anneliese was a victim of dissociative psychosis wrapped in religious fervor, or if she was the host of something truly beyond comprehension. You leave the room, but the screams linger in your ears, not because they were loud, but because they didn't end. And you begin to wonder, if it were you, would you believe? Or would you laugh softly and say, "She probably just watched too many horror movies"? A joke, perhaps, but sometimes jokes dance closer to the truth than we care to admit.
You return to the room once more, not because you crave that cold shiver trailing your spine, but because you feel you can't leave yet. Something's still open, a faint voice, soft as breath tapping on glass. You no longer look at Anneliese as a possessed girl or a misdiagnosed patient. She resembles something else now, a mirror of our centuries' divide between proof and belief, between what we can measure and what we dare not name. June 1976. The weather in Klingenberg turns stifling. Inside the Michel home, the air feels heavy, thick with something unseen, like every breath comes at a cost. Anneliese can no longer stand. Her body curls in on itself. Her skin fades to ash gray. But her eyes, according to her mother, still burn like fire in the dark. You're unsure if you'd believe that had her mother not said it with trembling lips. She never blamed us. She only said, "Mama, I know this has to happen." That one sentence became both balm and curse for the family, echoing long after her death. On June 30th, the final exorcism takes place. There's no screaming, no growling, just prayers and the slow, ragged breath of a body nearing its end. The next morning, Anneliese Michel dies at the age of 23. She weighs about 30 kilograms. Her cause of death, according to medical reports, malnutrition, dehydration, and pneumonia. A death, as the scientific mind might put it, that was entirely preventable. But, as you know, no one writes hymns for the preventable. News of her death spreads like fire, and within months, the case becomes a storm of media, opinion, and outrage. Her parents and the two priests, Fathers Alt and Rentz, are charged with negligent homicide. The trial opens in 1978, and if you'd been in the courtroom, you would have seen a room split clean in two. On one side, those who saw Anneliese as the tragic product of unchecked religious extremism. On the other, those who believed she died proving evil is real. One overlooked detail in the court files. In her final days, Anneliese begged not to be hospitalized. She believed the demons would hide if the rituals were interrupted. She called this a war that must not be left unfinished. You might say she was delusional, but can a delusional person defend a belief so clearly, so strategically? In the end, all 4 defendants were found guilty, but they received suspended sentences and fines as the court ruled their actions came from faith, not malice. A verdict no one was truly satisfied with, and no one could confidently call just. Time passed. Her grave became a strange pilgrimage site. Believers say they saw a white figure pacing the cemetery at dawn. Others claim they heard singing from the soil. Some, like you, just stood there for a long time and said nothing. In 1999, her grave was exhumed, not by court order, but because dreams. Her parents claimed they dreamt their daughter was not at rest. The results of the exhumation were never publicly released, but whispers from within suggest her body had not decayed as expected. A natural phenomenon? Soil conditions? Or, you see, we're right back where we began. Or, there is always an or. So, was Anneliese Michel truly possessed? Or was she the victim of a perfect storm of medical failure, spiritual fervor, and a society clinging to absolutes? Yet investigators still cannot agree whether hers was a death caused by untreated mental illness or a kind of martyrdom in the name of a truth only she believed in fully. A friend once recalled that before things spiraled, Anneliese told her during a quiet walk, "If you believe deeply enough, you'll hear what no one else dares name." Do you believe? Now you step back, leaving the room, letting the echoes settle behind you. The wind has stilled. Everything feels unusually quiet, as if even time must pause to exhale before closing this chapter. Anneliese's photograph remains, her eyes part invitation, part warning, like a dream you're not sure you want to wake up from. Maybe beneath all the headlines, all the verdicts, all the rituals, there's only one question left. What was real? You don't need to answer right now. Take it with you, tucked in your coat as you walk away. And if tonight, in that space between heartbeats, you hear a faint whisper that doesn't quite belong, know that you're not the only one who's ever stepped into that room. We still don't have an answer,